I would like to next introduce Koichi Sayano, our FDSTL president, to make his or to give us his welcome message. Koichi.
Okay, thank you, Seiju. Right. So welcome everyone to the 70th edition of the Federation of Dharma School Teachers League Conference. With the pandemic continuing, once again, we're gathered virtually. We have over 160 participants, over 6 time zones, and covering 2 countries. We'd like to thank Southern District Dharma School Teachers League for hosting today's conference under these difficult and challenging circumstances. This is essentially the same program that would have been presented last year in person, but the conference committee was able to, they spent a lot of time to pivot and present the material in this virtual format. The theme today, meeting the challenges of today's Dharma School, was developed long before anyone had heard the terms pandemic or COVID or coronavirus, but certainly is a very timely and applicable theme for today. And finally, I'd like to thank our colleagues from the Jodo Shinshu Buddhist Temples of Canada and the Hompa Honganji Mission of Hawaii for participating. I think this is a record turnout for the other Kyodans participating in our conference. Once again, thank you and enjoy the program.
Thank you, Koichi. I would like to next, well, in this spot, Rick was supposed to give you his welcome message as FDSTL president, but since he's not here, I will have him give his message a little later. But I'd like to welcome all of you. Good afternoon, and welcome to the 70th anniversary conference of the Federation of Dharma School Teachers League. A year ago, I was hoping to say welcome to OCBC and sunny Southern California, but unfortunately today you are neither here nor is it sunny. It is rather a gloomy, cloudy day, yet I'm happy to be here today, enjoying the comforts of my home, sitting in a comfortable chair while presenting to you a program we hope will be stimulating and engaging and provide you with the support you may need in meeting the challenges of today's Dharma School. I am proud of the work the committee has put in today's conference and have the confidence that you will be able to take something back to share with your temples. We have over 160 registrations with many from the Hompa Honganji Mission of Hawaii and from the Jodo Shinshu Temples of Canada, as well as our neighbors from the Eastern, Mountain, and Northwest districts. Thank you all for attending our conference. At this moment, I'd like to direct your attention to the conference booklet and the program schedule on page 7. We will have the keynote speech starting shortly, followed by the Q&A. Afterwards, we will take a timeout with a yoga stretch led by Linda Turner. The workshops will start sometime after 2, and you will be invited to join the breakout groups that were assigned to you for workshop session 1 and 2. This will be followed by the FDSTL general meeting and closing service. We will conclude at 5 with the evening workshop videos on our YouTube channel, which you can view at that time or at your leisure, or you can remain online and spend the time socializing with long lost friends. I now have the honor and privilege of introducing our keynote speaker, Pieper Toyama. Pieper was born and raised on a sugar plantation on the Big Island of Hawaii. He attended the University of Massachusetts Amherst and Northeastern University. He taught in high schools and at the University of Hawaii at Hilo, and served as head of Parker School in Kamuela before becoming the founding head of the Pacific Buddhist Academy. The Pacific Buddhist Academy is an independent, accredited high school established in 2003 and is the first Shin Buddhist high school to open outside of Japan. It is a proud member of the Ryukoku Sogo Gakuen, a federation of Shin Buddhist schools. The school seeks a diverse student body of differing faiths, heritage, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Their mission statement is to prepare students for college through academic excellence, to enrich their lives with Buddhist values, and to develop their courage to nurture peace. Pieper is retired and is the immediate past president of the Honpa Honganji Mission of Hawaii and the current vice president of Jikoen Honganji. He is married to Lois, who currently serves as the president of the Hawaii Federation of Buddhist Women's Associations. They have 2 daughters, Malia and Ailey, and 4 grandchildren who all live in Colorado. Pieper has participated in seminars at our BCA temples in the past. He was last here in Southern California on a speaking engagement in 2015. We have all enjoyed listening to what he has to say. After his keynote message, we will hold a question and answer period. We invite you to ask questions by entering them in the chat at any time. The moderators will monitor your questions and present them during the Q&A. So without further ado, I present you Pieper Toyama.
Good afternoon. In preparing this presentation, I struggled with how I was going to organize my thoughts. And in the end, I chose the simplest way. This afternoon, I would like to share my ideas of Dharma Schools by answering the question, if I were to start a Dharma school from scratch, what would it do and how would it do it? Okay, I'm going to get to my PowerPoint now. I want to make it clear that Dharma schools have many purposes and reasons for existing in a temple. Dharma schools are the result of history and tradition, result of ministers' inspiration, lay teachers' insights and creativity, and parental needs. What I shared today is only one approach for your consideration that may be added to those already being successfully used in your temples. The Dharma school, in my mind, is inspired by my experiences with Bishop Chikai Yoshimori. He was instrumental in securing funding from Honzan to establish the Pacific Buddhist Academy, the first Shin Buddhist high school in the Western Hemisphere, as he liked to say. When I was first hired, I had only a vague idea of the purpose of a Buddhist school, certainly not enough to develop an entire curriculum. So I asked Bishop Yoshimori what was the purpose of PBA. His advice was unusual and unexpected, and as a result may have led to a few ideas that some may consider out of the mainstream of Honganji educational practice. He started off by making it clear what was not the purpose of PBA. He said the purpose was not to only serve Shin Buddhist families. It was a school for everyone. It was not to convert students to Jodo Shinshu. The school was not to measure its success by the number of new Honganji members it brought in. For the school to be a Shin Buddhist school, it had to have a larger purpose than the growth of temple membership in Honolulu. He explained to me that PBA was to develop students who strive to live by Buddhist principles, and that effort to live in such a way carries on into their adult lives. If students' understanding of Buddhism led them to join Honganji temples in the future, well, that was fine. And if they only lived their lives guided by Buddhist values and never stepped foot in a Honganji temple after they left PBA, that was fine too. The whole point was to develop good human beings. The second piece of advice that Bishop Yoshimori shared was critical in expanding the parameters of my thinking about Buddhist education. He advised me to read, listen, and talk with ministers to improve my understanding of Shin Buddhism. Then he told me to couple that knowledge of Buddhism with the knowledge and experience that I had accumulated in the classroom over 34 years and use that to define PBA and its curriculum. Even when I asked him directly, he would not provide me with a list of what Shin Buddhist teachings and concepts that he thought PBA should teach. Instead, he simply said this to me. He told me to use my knowledge, my experience, and common sense in determining what aspects of the Shin Buddhist teachings would be most relevant and responsive in the lives of the students, and how all of that was to be integrated into the heart and soul of the school. So the seeds planted in the soil of Bishop Yoshimori's garden have grown into the ideas that I will share with you today. I will follow the three-step template that we used back in 2003 in defining Buddhist education at PBA. It is a template that Simon Sinek made popular 6 years later in 2009. First, I will speak to my personal view of the question, why do Dharma schools exist? Second, based on this defined purpose of Dharma schools, I will address the questions, what should be taught in these Dharma schools? What should students know and do? And third, I will share specific examples of teaching and learning experience activities to answer the question, how do Dharma schools teach? So let me begin with the question, why do Dharma schools exist? What is the purpose of Dharma schools? As I distill my experience in Buddhist education, I can only come up with one answer for the reason for Dharma schools' existence. And that is to create the conditions for students to engage in NEMBUTSU moments, the defining experience of Shin Buddhism. What is a NEMBUTSU moment? It is the moment when we realize that we are not alone in this precious life. It is a moment when we experience profound gratitude for what has been done, is being done, and will be done for us just as we are. It is the moment, according to Zenmon Sama Koshin Otani, when we feel the heart of Amida within the depths of our own hearts, just as we are. And in that moment, the only thing we can say is Namo Amida Butsu, the ultimate expression of gratitude, the essence of Shin Buddhism. We have all experienced NEMBUTSU moments. They happen spontaneously when we pay attention to what we are seeing, hearing, and feeling, and when we are struck by the simple beauty of what surrounds us. We experience NEMBUTSU moments when we see our family and friends, and we see the people known and unknown, living and gone, who have affected our lives. When we become aware of our relationships with family and friends and our enemies as well. And then we experience love, joy, happiness, loss, loneliness, and suffering that are born of those relationships. NEMBUTSU moments also include those moments when we know we are embraced, even when our behavior reflects the ugliness of anger, greed, and ignorance. And for us who are aging, NEMBUTSU moments happen when we are keenly aware of our life now and of our death that is to come. When we are immersed in these clear-eyed moments, the only thing we can say is Namo Amida Butsu. In those moments, Amida is real and true and present within our hearts. This is the NEMBUTSU moment, the defining experience of Shin Buddhism. However, I recognize that NEMBUTSU moment for a Dharma school student is less complex than what I just described. Their moments are moments of simple gratitude. It is not abstract to them. It is the concrete experience of feeling thankful. Thus, in simple terms, the Dharma schools exists to engage students in the experience of gratitude so it becomes a part of their daily lives. This means the ultimate purpose of Shin Buddhist education is an action that embodies a spiritual moment. It is not information, it is not knowledge. It is saying Namo Amida Butsu in gratitude. These simple gratitude moments will mature and grow into the rich and comforting experience that we as adults know as NEMBUTSU moments. But for the purposes of this presentation, I will use the term NEMBUTSU moment, and it will refer to the range of moments gratitude experienced by children and teens to moments of profound gratitude as described by Zenmon-sama. Now for the second question, what? What do students need to know and do to engage in Namo Amida Butsu? In answering this question, I turned to another statement by Zenmon-sama. He said, quote, "When we sense the presence of Amida Buddha in our life, just as we are, the NEMBUTSU comes naturally and spontaneously," end of quote. So the answer to the question, what do students need to know and do, is embedded in a phrase, when we sense the presence of Amida Buddha. I believe sensing the presence of Amida happens when we mindfully connect with our surroundings, the people in our lives, and the things that make our lives possible. It also happens when we become sincerely aware of the person we truly are, just as we are. Let me do a quick summary here. The purpose of Dharma Schools is to engage students in NEMBUTSU moments or gratitude moments. And students engage in these moments when they mindfully connect with the world and themselves. Now let me get to the third question. How do we develop students to be mindfully connected to the world and themselves? A discussion of this question of how really needs to begin with a question of who. Who will teach? What are the qualities they should possess and what should they know? This is a critical question because education is dependent on the quality of the people who are interacting with students. And experience and educational research tells us these facts about effective teachers. They have strong relationships with their students. They are passionate about helping students to learn. They are clear about what they want their students to learn, and they select teaching approaches accordingly. They know their students. This means that they are familiar with the stages of the child's development. This background knowledge is helpful in how they relate to students and in the lessons they develop. I would like to take a few moments here to briefly outline the stages of children's development for the benefit of new Dharma School teachers. Please remember that these stages are not hard and fast. Children develop at different rates. These are just guidelines that describe what may be happening to your students. In early childhood, ages 5 to 8, children are learning to imagine and to broaden their skills through active play of all sorts, including fantasy. They're learning to be independent. They're learning to cooperate with others and learning to lead as well as follow. In middle childhood, ages 9 to 12, children are learning to relate with peers according to rules. So rules now become a part of middle childhood. To move from free play to play that is structured by rules and may demand formal teamwork. They're learning to be trusting, industrious, autonomous, and full of initiative. And they're learning self-discipline. In adolescence, ages 13 to 19, they're learning how to answer satisfactorily and happily the question, who am I? They're learning self-certainty as opposed to self-consciousness and self-doubt. And these are times when they will experiment with different roles. They're learning to achieve rather than become paralyzed by feelings of inferiority. And teens are seeking adults who inspire them and gradually help them to develop a set of enduring ideals and morals. Therefore, Dharma School teachers who share essential Shin Buddhist teachings and values in relevant ways can play an important role in the lives of Dharma School teens. Another area that Dharma School teachers should know, and that is the life situations of their students and their families. This knowledge can guide them not only in the development of lessons, but also help to build relationships between teacher, student, and parents. I suggest that this area of knowledge include the following. Who is involved in parenting a child? Does the child have both mother and father, or is a single parent or grandparents raising the child? What are the significant life experiences of the child? Are there transitions they are experiencing, such as beginning and endings, birth and death? Are there changes in the relationships that they are experiencing? Are there divorces and separations? Are there celebrations coming up, like their birthdays? Other special remembrances? What is the nature of their daily challenges? What are the expectations and the disruptions and routines in their daily lives? Are there undue academic and social pressure in their lives? How are they doing emotionally? Are they experiencing loneliness and disappointment, stress and anxiety, joy and happiness? The more teachers know about their students, the more relevant and responsive learning experiences they will be able to design, the more helpful conversations they will have with their students. So these are the qualities of the people who carry out the why and the how of Dharma School education. Now, let me get on with how the Dharma Schools nurture mindful connections that engage students in NEMBUTSU moments. Everything I share today are activities that were implemented at PBA, so I do know they all work. I will give examples of 3 types of learning activities, and if you look closely and think about them, you will see that these activities are inspired by the Buddhist truths of impermanence and the interdependence of all things. The first type of activity is behavior-based learning. This type of learning activities are derived from a teaching learning principle that has been part of the Asian educational system for hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of years. And the principle is this: in the beginning, teach the body and mind to act, and the spirit will follow. A tipping point will be reached through repetition, and then the spirit will lead the way, and the mind and body will follow. If you follow this principle in developing activities, it means that we use physical activity or behavior as a means of developing mindful connection with the world. I refer to these behavior-based activities as Buddhist kata because they are very much like martial arts kata. They are physical, predetermined, and repetitive actions that are done at designated standards. Over time, these kata can result in spiritual and mindful connections with the world and lead to NEMBUTSU moments. One other thing, Buddhist kata must always be fun. Whenever we did Buddhist kata at PBA, students knew I was very serious about the end result, but they always knew that getting there had to be fun. The following examples of Buddhist kata begin by assuming a respectful posture and deep core breathing. That is taking in air through your nose and moving it to your core or hara. Then breathing out through your mouth. If you know of other breathing techniques that work for you, I suggest that you use what is most comfortable for you. But you need to know that posture and breathing physically brings the students into the moment, and it prepares their body. So here are some very simple kata that you can do with children all the way through teens. Now remember, all of this we did with PBA students on a regular basis. The 5 senses is a kata that connects students to the world outside of themselves. In this kata, students assume and they breathe. They sit quietly and use their 5 senses to distinguish and perceive the details in their environment. They identify people and objects, colors, sounds, smells, temperature, and breezes, and other tactile sensations. And after a few minutes, they say thank you to those things their 5 senses identified. So they say, thank you, desk. Thank you, pencil. Thank you, teacher. And so on. And then we finish with NEMBUTSU. I suggest that you do this exercise in different locations. Of course, the Dharma School classroom, but try the temple hondo. And best of all, do this exercise outside. Quiet sitting is a kata that simply connects students to the unrepeatable moment. It just simply brings them here and now, and they remain there at least for a short time. Students sit comfortably with 2 feet on the floor, assuming a respectful posture, and breathe. And when I say respectful posture, I assume you know what that looks like, okay? This exercise seems to work best if they close their eyes gently. The teacher strikes a bell, and we found that striking a daikin is best because the sound resonates for such a long time. And students listen carefully to the sound, and they try to identify the exact moment that they no longer can hear the sound of the bell. And we repeat, and this is repeated several times. If you've never tried this, I really suggest that you do, because it is a moment where all you're doing is a single thing, and that's listening. And it reminds you of the unrepeatable moment. And of course, we end with NEMBUTSU. This is something, greetings is a kata that people overlook. Because greetings connects students to others, especially people they don't often acknowledge, like the minister or other Dharma School teachers or other adults in the temple. So in this kata, and high school students really need to know this because they don't know how to greet adults, many of them. The students stand in a posture that reflects respect for the other person. They breathe. And they focus on the other person. They're trying to see how the other person is feeling. And then they shape a smile on their face that is welcoming. And then they look the person gently in the eye. These 2 things, children are not, may not be skilled in doing. Smiling to convey a feeling of warmth and looking a person gently in the eye. So that's why practice is not a bad thing to do. And depending on the age and social skills of the students, you need to make adjustments. They already know the phrases for greeting their friends, so you don't need to practice them. Those. Instead, they need to practice phrases when greeting an adult, such as, good morning, or hello, Mrs. Oshiro. It's nice to see you. How are you? How was your day? Little phrases like that and they need to learn those phrases, and they need to say those phrases. They also need to learn how to shake hands or bow in a manner that conveys respect. Most students do not know how to shake hands properly. That a handshake that conveys warmth and a warm connection to the other person, and shaking hands in that manner does require a certain kind of grip and movement. And these are things they don't know because nobody taught them. I've had high school students who never shook hands. And so I believe that this greeting kata is very important. Saying thank you kata is another kata to acknowledge others, to connect to others. Students stand in a posture that reflects respect for the person. And again, in this kata, they really focus on the other person who has done something for them. They use a person's name and specify the act or object for which they're thankful. And they need to be specific. They need to say things like, thank you, Reverend Nishiyama, for your Dharma message. I learned a lot about Shinran. Or, thank you, Mrs. Oshiro. Your andagi was delicious. They can also use nonverbal communications to enhance their message or to convey the warmth that they feel. They can smile. They can bow or just nod their heads or shake hands. And they should know that all of these things in saying thank you are available to them. Temple rituals are katas for students to help them be fully connected and present in sharing their gratitude in the temple, to be all of their attention and spiritual presence is there in the temple. And this kata helps. So they assume a respectful posture and they breathe and they practice simple rituals like bowing, make gasho or shoko. And this, you don't do this only once, you do this often. So they're always practicing bowing or shoko, gasho. It is important that they perform each movement slowly and with mindful respect and sincerity. That is the whole point of this kata. And of course, they say Namo Amida Butsu. I'll say this about performing each movement slowly. A lot of times, students will move their bodies in such a way that it's obvious that there's no feeling of respect or sincerity in their movement. And so what we did at PBA is I would just look at that and I say, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. So do it over again and again and again. And then they get it. They do get that what they're doing is not sincere. And when they put a little bit of spirit in it, their whole movement changes and they communicate their respect and sincerity. And they know it. And so you never let them get away with doing insincere and non-respectful behavior. For teens especially, they are bound to have emotional moments. And here's a simple kata that can help them out. In these moments of stress, anxiety, depression, or even just when they need a break, they assume a respectful and relaxed posture that can be sitting, standing, or lying down. And they do deep breathing. And in this kata, we tell them, look for the pain, enjoy your pain, identify it, do not deny what you are feeling. Say what you're feeling, feel it. Feel it in all its suffering glory. And then when you realize you realize that you're still alive and tomorrow is another day, then say Namo Amida Butsu. But if you're unable to say this and all you can do is suffer, then say Namo Amida Butsu anyways. I'd like to make one comment about Buddhist kata before I go to the second type of learning activity. All of the Buddhist kata that I listed are values in action. So as you examine core values such as gratitude, kindness, acceptance, wisdom, and compassion in your workshops, please know that Buddhist kata is one tool for transforming core values from abstract and conceptual constructs to actual behavior that one can see. At PBA, we always believed that Buddhist education was to focus on the behavioral expression of values. But some people say this, well, they're bowing, but how do you know they feel gratitude? How do you know what's inside their heart? And the answer is we don't. We don't know what's in their heart. All we can do is see the behavior. And if they call on that behavior over and over and over again, as the learning principle says, at first the body does it and the spirit follows, but later on, the spirit initiates and the body follows. There will come a time, know that in the bow, that the bow is driven by gratitude. It may not be in those years that they were at PBA, but it will happen. That's the kind of assumption we made when we did Buddhist kata. The second type of learning activity uses a student's memory and personal storehouses of images to make mindful connection with others and the world around them. And here are some examples. The gratitude journal. Students get a journal, preferably hardbound. They reflect, and then they write a list of the people, the objects, events for which they're grateful. And they say, NEMBUTSU. This is something that they should do every day or several times a week. Research, social scientists have proven that keeping gratitude journals will have an effect on your sense of well-being. So it's been scientifically proven that this activity can make a difference. Another one where they're calling up using their memories is the gratitude circle. And this one, they sit around a table and each person takes turns sharing one thing they're grateful for. And when everybody shares, everybody says NEMBUTSU. This is a good exercise for opening a Dharma class or closing a Dharma class. Families should definitely adopt this practice before or after dinner. When they're sitting around a table, you say, okay, let's do a gratitude circle, and quickly go around and everybody says one thing they're thankful for. Another one is something that people don't do enough of and should do more of, and that is write thank you notes. So in this one here, everybody has a box, and in the box there's note paper, envelopes, and stamps. You take out the box, everybody takes out their box, and they write thank you notes. And the teacher has to also write the thank you note as well. The students need to see the teacher writing a thank you note. This is a good exercise for families as well. So on Saturday morning, the family takes out their thank you note box and they all write thank you notes, the parents as well. Important thing to remember about thank you notes is that the note should specify the object or the act for which they are grateful. And they should also have a line that tells the receiver how they feel. So it's just not just thank you. It's thank you for this object and it makes me feel this way, okay? When the activity is done, everybody sits around and they say, NEMBUTSU. There's a third type of learning activity. And this activity is along more traditional lines. The relevance of, let me see something. Thank you. The third type of learning activity is intellect-based. It's more traditional. And in this activity, teachers provide information, content, facts, vocabulary, and it primarily appeals to the students' intellect. And they may be lessons on the objects on the Onai, the 6 paramitas, the life of Shakyamuni Buddha, 4 Noble Truths. So it's teaching students these facts and information. But when you do these intellect-based learning activities, you should assess them in this way. How does this content help students make mindful connections to the world? How does this content help students engage in NEMBUTSU moment? So if you're going to teach them the parts of the Onai, but you never make this connection between these things on the Onai and the world or their life, or it never facilitates the saying of Nam Myoho, then you have to rethink how you're presenting the lesson. And that is something I think we forget when we do intellect-based learning, especially if the purpose of a Dharma school is NEMBUTSU moments. So far, I've talked about my concept of the purpose of Dharma schools and what they should teach and how they should teach. In this next part, I want to share a few thoughts about the NEMBUTSU experience. Here's my first thought. Dharma schools must remove any confusion about Namu Amida Butsu in the minds of Dharma school students. There should be nothing mysterious about what it means and about why they say it. For children and teens, the simplest explanation is that Namu Amida Butsu is a way of saying thank you for all that has been, is being, and will be done for them. It is an expression of gratitude. At that age, gratitude, plain and simple. Namu Amida Butsu has a very simple and relevant meaning in their life. It's an expression of gratitude. With time and maturity, students will experience it in the way that Zenmon Sama explains it, sensing the presence of Amida in their lives, just as they are. My second thought, students should know the different ways of saying Namu Amida Butsu. They should be encouraged to use what is most comfortable for them. If Nam Mandab is easy for them, then that's what you should encourage them to say. And don't forget this, especially in the younger age, explain to them that when you use the word NEMBUTSU, it means Namu Amida Butsu. They're not two different things. And I say this because I met a member in our temple who came to temple service for years and years and never quite understood that they were the same thing. So you don't know what's going on in the minds of students. So just get out there and make it clear to them. My third thought is that students should understand that there are no limits or restrictions to where and when they can say Namu Amida Butsu. That the NEMBUTSU is for anywhere, just as they are. It's not only for temple or for Dharma school or for after meals, that it's anywhere they can say it. And that it's for any time they can say thank you. When they're feeling thankful, of course, but even when they're feeling sad, unhappy, and lonely, they can say thank you that I have parents. When they feel joy and happiness, when they're unkind and hurtful to another person, when they're kind and generous, when they see something beautiful. These are all times for them to say Namu Amida Butsu in gratitude. My fourth thought has to do with the natural outcomes of Namu Amida Butsu moments. The totality of the NEMBUTSU moment is not only the sound of Namu Amida Butsu, but it also includes the behavior that naturally flows from the sound. This concept that from the experience of NEMBUTSU coming from our lips spontaneously can flow kindness and love is supported not only by the sutras, some of the sutras, but by Shin Buddhist scholars as well. And I will quote here to emphasize that their NEMBUTSU moment is the sound and the natural outcome. But in the larger Pure Land Sutra, there is this quote: sentient beings who encounter this light have the three defilements swept away, and they become soft and gentle in body and mind. They dance with joy, and the good mind arises in them. Jodo Shinshu scholar Reverend Kakehashi wrote, grounded on the sense of gratitude and shame, persons of NEMBUTSU begin to live a new life, refraining from committing selfish deeds and trying to respond to the Tathagata's compassion. His Eminence Goju no Tani said, quote, although we might not be able to completely eradicate our blind passions, within the embracing light of Amida Buddha, we can live each moment of our lives with true meaning. Rather than simply live day in and day out just as if we're just going through the motions, in the teachings illuminating light, we can find clarity and meaning in our lives. Not separating ourselves from society is important, that we live within the priceless interconnections that we have with one another and support each other. End of quote. In the Dharma School, we acknowledge that in NEMBUTSU moments, students can encounter Amida's illuminating light, and from that, sound can flow kindness and love, generosity, and the courage to support others, and the purpose and clarity in their lives. And what does this have to do with Dharma schools? Hence, an important activity of Dharma schools is to craft opportunities for students to physically express and share these outcomes. As teachers guide and support students into NEMBUTSU moments, so must they encourage their students to outwardly express the kindness that naturally flow from gratitude. The totality of NEMBUTSU moments includes the expression of these natural acts of kindness and love. It is through Dharma School projects and activities that call on students to share these natural outcomes of Nam Myo Amida Butsu with others that they build the courage and the confidence to make the spirit of interdependence and kindness an integral part of their daily lives. In this way, the sound of Nam Myo Amida Butsu changes the world. I wish to conclude my presentation with a few words about parental partnerships in Dharma schools. We all understand the power of parental partnerships. We all know that parents who say Nam Myo Amida Butsu have children who say Nam Myo Amida Butsu. Thus, Dharma school education must extend to parents. One way to do this is to have Dharma schools for parents. That is the best way to educate them. But if this is not possible, the Dharma schools should have regular meetings between the teachers, minister, and parents. At these meetings, the purpose of the Dharma school and how that purpose is achieved is explained. Then there are descriptions of how the Dharma school and parents in partnership will teach their children to make those mindful connections that result in Nam Myo Amida Butsu. These short weekly Sunday meetings not only nurture partnerships, but it should be used to educate parents. So they should always include brief descriptions of learning activities and explanations of the purpose and the hope for outcomes of what you're trying to do. And then parents should be given homework assignments. This is important. They should be asked to carry on what was taught in Dharma school at home. And so you give them instructions and handouts on how to do the exercises with their children at home. And the easiest thing is to just give them Buddhist kata to do at home. Another thing these short meetings should do is just share feedback. Let the parents tell you what's going on and how everything is working as far as they're trying to implement the teachings from the Dharma school to the home. That interaction can lead to a sense of community between Dharma school teachers and the parents, and this is important. There's a second thing a Dharma school should do that will strengthen the partnership, and that is to share information that supports the importance and positive effects of gratitude. There's not only Shin Buddhist scholarship, but also a body of research conducted by social scientists that validate and confirm the importance of gratitude to one's happiness, health, and well-being. This information should be shared with parents regularly. Okay, this ends my presentation. Now let me do a quick summary. The purpose of Dharma schools is to engage students and parents in NEMBUTSU moments, the defining experience of Shin Buddhism. Dharma schools must teach students to make mindful connections with the world around them. Dharma schools can teach mindful connections through Buddhist kata, to memory-based activities, to intellect-based activities. We should always teach our students that Namo Amida Butsu is an expression of gratitude and can be said anytime, anywhere. Most importantly, we must encourage our students to express the spirit of kindness and interdependence, which are natural outcomes of Namo Amida Butsu moments. And of course, parental partnerships are enhanced when we meet and communicate with them. Thank you so very much for inviting me to speak. I really appreciate your kindness and attention, and I'll be available through the day if you have any questions. Thank you.
Hello, and it's the moderators for this is myself and Terry Omori. Terry?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Pieper, for your always motivating and inspiring messages that you share with us. And just thank you for being with us here today. We have a couple questions that came through. And so to start off, we have, well, actually, I'm going to let Reverend Turner start off with a question.
Okay, well, we had one important question. They were wondering, do you think that your focus on Buddhist values have limited the occurrence of bullying that is prevalent in so many high schools? Were students qualitatively more kind to one another?
Yes, I can honestly say that the atmosphere of PBA was very, very different from other schools, independent schools or public schools. And here is a difference. At PBA, we're a Buddhist school, therefore Buddhist-based behavior was of the highest priority. So that was higher priority than academics. College prep was secondary to how the students were behaving. When you develop an environment like that, and the students get it, that how they behave is the most important thing, then your school, it's the thing is that the spirit follows and the spirit leads. So I believe that any school can address bullying if they make behavior the highest priority. And all bullying programs, if you look at it, it's not a high priority. It's an add-on. It's a Band-Aid. So that is a difference, because I saw it happen.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We just had another question come in just now. It says, have you found that your graduated students have been able to rely on any particular Buddhist kata to deal with the challenges they may face when they are perhaps away from home for the first time?
I haven't done a survey in kind to ask students what are they specifically applying to. But I do know that some of the things, like for example, greeting another person, those kinds of things stick. Um, uh, because we did it over and over and over again throughout the year, and so it became a habit. So when they were out and about, they knew exactly what they should do, what they should say when meeting when meeting an adult. So I believe those little things like that we as adults encounter all the time does emerge in their lives.
Okay, there's another good question that we just got. It says, while an educator at the Pacific Buddhist Academy, could you please share key points in how we might share the Dharma to students and family who have no previous background, not only in Jodo Shinshu, but in Buddhism as well?
What because of Bishop Yoshimori's influence, we did not use much of the vocabulary that we're familiar with in Jodo Shinshu temples. So we focused on the general terms of gratitude, but we taught Buddhist principles. So we emphasized impermanence, we emphasized gratitude, we emphasized interdependence, and we used all of that language. And one of the things that I think that made the difference is that when a student was taken into the school and the parents were interviewed, they were told at that moment that the purpose of the school was to teach them the behaviors that reflect these values, and then to do college prep. So when you make it clear like that, and they know what they're getting into, a lot of the kinds of negative behavior of competition or the need to be the best sort of falls by the wayside, because that's it.
All right, very good, thank you. Another one we just had is, how has PBA students and faculty handled or discussed the current anti-Asian hate and BLM issues?
So in Hawaii, we do not have a large, let me address the Black Lives Matter. In Hawaii, we do not have a large population of African Americans. So our experience with African Americans is very, very limited. We know, and so one of the best things that ever happened is that when we had the first African American students come to the school, and what happens was this: she told everybody in the school what annoys her about how we talk to her, how we treat her, and all of those things. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know we're racist. And she, in no uncertain terms, made it real clear. And what happened was that she changed the whole culture. Then everybody became very, very much aware of the things that we do and how it affects others. So that was a huge lesson on interdependence. And that's how we addressed it. So the thing is that we made sure that the conversations were front and center over and over. And remember now, because behavior is higher priority in academics, we made the time during the day activities so that you address the details and the specificity of how we treat other people and how they feel because of their treatment in our words. So that was the change and the sensitivity that was born in people because of those students. If the students didn't come, we would not be able to have done that, because we ourselves, even the teachers, didn't know what they were doing and how it made African Americans feel. So that was that. The Asian American thing, I've been retired from the school, so I've not been part of that effort in the last year. But if they're following the template, then what is happening is that there are many discussions, there's research going on, and it's folded into lots of the academic parts of the day, where they're looking at the issue and the causes and the conditions that contribute to what we're looking at, and they do projects. So the idea is to keep it front and center all the time, and to study it and to look at it. But you have to also understand, in Hawaii, the immediacy is not the same as on the mainland because of our diverse culture in Hawaii. Our students are not experiencing our families are not experiencing that kind of anxiety that people on the mainland may be experiencing. But the concern is there. We're worried as heck, but it's there's a disconnect. There is a little bit of a disconnect.
Terry, do you have any questions?
Yes. I like it, how you, toward the end of your presentation, you did speak about parental partnership, the importance of it.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions in the chat box is, do you ever find resistance from parents to reinforce the teachings at home? Not necessarily against the teachings, but rather taking the time to apply the practices at home.
No, all the time I was there, and then we had most of our families were non-Buddhist, and when we first started school, I wondered how they would respond to the kind of certainty we brought to the curriculum about this is the way. You know, we're not tolerating anything less than this, because this is a Buddhist school, and as a Buddhist school, this is what we do. That's how it was presented, and the remarkable thing is that parents accepted it when it was explained to them what the priorities are and what we're trying to do. It all made sense to them, and so we never had any kind of, at least not when I was there, where parents said, "I don't like what you guys are doing or talking about. I don't like how you're doing it." It was never that never occurred. And when you think about this as a parent, here's a school who's trying to make their kid a better human being, a nicer person. And if they begin seeing it at home, then they say, well, hey, this is really good. And basically, that's what was happening.
Pieper, this is Hishi. How many kids have graduated from your high school? Because I went there in 2000 something, and it was, yeah, just a high school. So how many kids have graduated so far?
Here's my estimate. We graduated the first class in 2007. And since then, we graduated students every year. And the range of students we graduate number is about 20, 25 students. So that's about the number of students we graduate.
Another question just came in about how has the PBA functioned during the pandemic? Are classes now virtual? If so, how has that impacted teaching and student learning? Have there been any specific teaching moments from this experience?
At first it was virtual 100%. And then they went and they still remain as hybrid. So what they do is half the school is in school at a time and the other half is virtual, and they switch every other day. So there is, and they're maintaining that model for the time being. The way, Buddhist education really is about hands-on, being personal, about being there, especially because behavior, and it's about relationships. And so that has been very, very difficult. It's easy to teach academics virtually, but a real challenge to maintain that emphasis on behavior and values. So when they return to the hybrid half on, half off, that was a welcome for the faculty to be able to make that contact again. But I think it has suffered. I think Buddhist education has suffered simply because there's less contact.
Another question in the chat box is how much of the curriculum is focused on the teachings of Shinran and Shin Buddhism specifically?
Very little, because there definitely are in their Dharma classes. There are Dharma classes, and there are introductory lessons to that, to Shinran and Buddha Shinchu. They have a temple service every week. So the mechanics of a temple service, the students know very, very well. And the information regarding all the things related to temple service is most definitely part of their education. But the facts and details of Shinran's life is not a huge part of the curriculum. Because you got to remember now that we never saw it as about facts and knowledge and content. That was never important. And Bishop Yoshimori was the one who sort of led the way. He said, you know, this is what he said. He said, you know, you need to make sure your students are independent and critical thinkers. And then I said, well what about, you know, the primal vow and what about Shinjing and all, you know, all, and what are the life of Shinran? And he said, no. If you don't teach them how to think critically and independently, then when you teach that stuff, you can't make a decision whether it makes sense to them, but it's valid in their lives. So you got to teach them to think, and then you can teach them the other stuff. And he didn't particularly care what the other stuff was, but he definitely said, don't teach them that information if they can't think critically and decide for themselves whether it's valid and something good to believe. And so he quoted the Kalama Sutra where, you know, don't accept anything unless it makes sense to you. And because of that beginning, the information and the details of Jodo Shinshu was never entered into the curriculum as a high priority.
So we had another comment that a lot of high school students are, you know, very anxious about their grades and applying to the right college. And it would seem that the techniques you're using would really help improve skills such as listening, attention, test taking. Have any comments on that?
Well, we valued that they went to school. They went and continued education. It was valuable to us. But what we always said is that every student must pick the right school. Okay? Go find the right school for you. And the whole idea of sending them name brand schools and all of that was never a priority. And in fact, when a parent came to our school and said, I want my kid to go to Yale, and then we would say, this is the wrong school for you. You know, if that is your highest priority, then there's a lot of other private schools down the road that's what they do. They exist for that purpose. So go there. Over here, we have a different purpose. So the whole idea of the competitiveness of college prep and all and test taking was never part of our culture at the time I was there. Going to college was something you do, expected to do that, but it's not part of your life. And so, and we never emphasized. We never had an example. We never had special classes to prepare kids for the tests, or anything of that thing. It was always about, so the learning. Now, when you do that, what happens is the learning is very project-based, very behavioral-based, very active, value-based. And you create an entirely different feel as far as students, how they relate to what they're trying to accomplish in the time that they're in high school. Very, very,
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah. I think maybe what they were suggesting, that your approach in the long run might actually produce better outcomes for life.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. I think it did. I think it really did. And there, and all for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So I do believe our students were good students, very good.
Yes. Yes.
Academically.
Yeah.
There was one more question that I see that as we start to wrap up our Q&A, there was a question was if we would be able, would you share your copies of Buddhist kata?
Yes. Yes.
Your PowerPoint, would you share that with us?
Yes, I will. In fact, I think you have a copy. What I'll do is I'll make the whole text of my script available to your chair, your co-chairs, and then they can figure out how to distribute it. But yes,
yeah. Thank you
See,
so much.
One of the things that I do want to emphasize is that teachers who are interested in Buddhist kata should be developing their own. It's not a difficult thing to develop your own Buddhist kata.
Thank you. But your guidance, or at least your from your PowerPoint, that did start to create. You plant the seeds. You're creating the thought process for our teachers, and it's very, very helpful.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
I also wanted to thank you personally. We've been discussing how to have make a partnership with the parents in our Dharma school, and we knew we wanted to do it, but we really didn't know how. And so I really appreciated you gave us a lot of concrete takeaways that we could actually implement. So not theory, but actual practices. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. That was my intention.
You succeeded, sir.